All right. So next up, we're going to go ahead and jump into the second section that I'll be covering with you today, and that's payment codes and scenarios. As you can see in this section, we're going to go over payment and adjustment codes, scenarios, payment and census, verification and special circumstances, and clock hours. So, we did speak about this earlier, but to recap, again, there are two ways to process payments. That's manually on the display roster. Again, for those onesie twosie students, or again, you have a very small student population, or two, the uploading of the grant roster file. This allows you to in mass report payments. Usually, this is again utilized by the schools that have a large student population. And again, my example is the beginning of the term where you're processing payments for, a vast amount of your student population. And usually this is done using the financial aid management system at your school, which will again export that data into the proper .txt file for uploading to our WebGrants system. Also, weekly process, again, you report those payments. Those again, at first have that AA or AP. Over the weekend, our computer system crunches numbers, and if the payment request is fully processed, you will see on Monday that AA or AP now has turned to RA or RP, meaning that the transaction has been processed, or the technical term in our system has been reconciled. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about payment and adjustment codes. So, some important information about the student's Cal Grant, including things like housing status, education level, foster youth status, and remaining eligibility, can be found at the top of the grant roster page or when you pull up that student's award. You can adjust a student's Cal Grant by using the adjust amount field here. And also, you must select an adjustment reason when using the adjusted amount. You can also use the pay codes, and this is where you can just do like FT for full time, TT for 3/4 time, HT for half time, and it will auto populate the correct payment for that student's award. Also, if you want to take a look at the different adjustment reasons, just hit the little I icon next to adjustment reasons, and you will see all of the codes come up. And we're going to take a look at those in just a few moments. But again, if you're in the system and want to see what the codes mean, just click on that I. And again, if you want to see what the payment statuses are, again, next to pay status, select the I, and again, it will populate those codes for you. So there are 5 payment codes that you can report and an additional 4 adjustment codes that will auto report on the roster to reflect accepted payments and adjustments and reconciled payments and adjustments. So, first one, PD, that's the quick and easy way to pay a student full time on their award. SC, school change, that's for whenever a student says, "Hey, I have an award." You go in the system, you type in, their information, and it says, "Oh, you have an award, but right now you're on another school's roster." So to bring them to your roster, you would just select SC, and that student will then be moved onto your active roster. In A, this is when you determine, hey, this student that shows up on my roster is not attending, our school. So in A, and that will move the student off of your active roster and into a section that is on the end of the roster, which we have titled not in attendance. But that will only be done after the weekly process. YA, or what I like to say is yay, because the student did, finally show up on campus. So to reverse the NA and bring the student back onto the active roster, we select YA. And IT, and this is for schools that are what you can see BDGI, or bachelor degree granting institutions, or the 4 years where a student comes over with an E2 award designation, but through your verification process, you find that the student is not truly eligible for the award. You can then go ahead and submit IT, and that will automatically withdraw the student. But because again, it automatically withdraws that award, please, 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 dot your I's and your lowercase j's and cross your T's to ensure that they are truly not eligible for that transfer entitlement award before utilizing that IT. Again, we have talked about NA, so I'm not going to say too much more, except that this is a annual code. So if in the fall you put NA and then we're in spring and the student still does not show up at the school, you don't need to report it again. It only needs to be reported once. And then hopefully that student will, show up on campus. And if so, to bring them back, again, we use our YA code to bring them back to the active roster. Now, here are our adjustments codes. We have 15, but I'm only going to talk about a few of them here. Again, the big one, or I won't say big ones, but our payment ones are FTTTHT, so full time, 3/4 time, and half time. We also have NS, and this is the code you will use if you need to reverse a payment. So I report a payment for this student, find out they're not eligible, then you will use NS and 0 to back out that payment. SR, that's for our students that are seniors and their final Cal Grant payment. LH, they're less than half time. So again, they're not eligible for payment for that term. And LA, and this is where, again, the student is either requesting not to receive Cal Grant funds, because there's sometimes, especially if they're at a community college and they find out, hey, it's going to take me, I've already received 2 years. It's going to take me one more semester to make that transfer to the 4 year. So, because you are a great counselor, you suggested that I don't take it. There's other funding to help me get through this last semester. So, I'm going to take a leave of absence for that term. Or there's sometimes the student, or you know what? Actually, let's use the NA for fall. Student shows back up in spring. We bring them back to the active roster, but we need to report something for fall before we can process anything for spring. So in that case, for fall term, we'll use LA. That will satisfy the payment for fall term, and then we can get them processed for a spring payment if they're eligible. Then we have our O codes. And this is OF for if they are a full-time student, OT, 3/4 time student, or OH half-time. But what's special about the O codes here is you want to utilize this when the student may have limited outside funding that's covering, say, their tuition and fees. But again, we don't want to just really use all of their leave of absence. So in this case, and we know, hey, this scholarship's only good for the fall term. Maybe they're on a football scholarship that's again only covering fall term. So in this case, we do OF 0. It doesn't use any eligibility because if we put any dollar amount with the O code, even $1, it will use the subsequent eligibility. So OF, again, that's for full time. It will use 50%, but we only paid the student $1. That's not a good usage of the O code. But again, hey, you got that, whatever the sport may be, it's covering the fall term only. So you don't need the Cal Grant payment. So I'm going to put the O code 0. It satisfies. So then in spring term, when you don't have that scholarship, we can then use Cal Grant to cover your tuition and fees. FI. This is a code where you only want to use that if they're like you've been trying to get to the student and, hey, I need these documents for verification, but they don't respond. Use FI. Now, unless you can clear the FI by the end of the award year, the student will be withdrawn from the award. We have NP, that's for not maintaining SAP or satisfactory academic progress. Again, this is a term level code, and you can use it in subsequent terms, but I want to, the way I picture it is MP is like baseball. 3 MPs and you're out. If again, it's done in 3 consecutive terms. So fall, let's just say we're quarterback school. So fall, winter, and spring, your award will be withdrawn. But if it's only fall, winter, they get back in good graces with SAP and can be paid for spring term, you're safe. And then again, IG should only be used if it's ineligible program length or program type. And one of them that comes to mind is our Cal Grant C program. If they were awarded one, but they're not in a vocational, occupational, or technical training, then we would use IG to withdraw them. If it's for anything like you need an award withdrawn because, say, you get a subsequent ICER and the student's income is now over, do not use IG. You will then use our grant record change, report that new information because then our system can withdraw the student with the proper code. Because again, if the student say calls in and says, why was my award withdrawn? Our my coworkers on the phones will be able to say, hey, this was due to your income was readjusted and was found that you are ineligible. Because if you just do IG, well, one, it's not because of ineligible program length or type, but also it doesn't give them any information and just makes it to where we're like, we don't know why. You may want to speak with your school regarding that. Ooh, excuse me. Again, like I was saying with our SR code, only for schools that are the BDGIs. But again, we're only using that in the final term of a student that is about to graduate. Because actually, what it does is it allows for the student to be paid full tuition charges up to what they're actually being charged, even if their enrollment may be not full time. Also, well, no, I won't say also. Let me say it this way. So with tuition and fees, again, they can get full tuition up to the term maximum, but with the access award on a Cal Grant B, that will be treated as normal and again prorated based off of enrollment status. All right, again, we spoke about leave of absence in one way. Again, um, I want to save my, award for when I transfer to my 4 year. I want to make sure I transfer over with, 2 years of full-time eligibility. Also, again, student wasn't there for fall, here for spring, can use that LA for the fall term to satisfy the reporting so you can then report for spring term. Another is, again, they are on a leave from the school. And also, this can be reported, well, let me say self-reported by a student, because if they know, hey, I'm not going spring term, they themselves can report that leave of absence. And last but not least, schools are not permitted to place a leave of absence for a newly awarded competitive student. The only one that can do so would be the student themselves. Again, FI, again, we're having trouble getting verification documents from the student. So we place the FI. One thing I didn't say was, again, it too is a annual level code. So it does not need to be reported in a subsequent term. But you how do I want to say this? FI, if it's still on the student's award at the end of the academic year, unfortunately, that student's award will be withdrawn. Also, once you do FI, you will not be able to use different pay codes like PD or NA. You will, let's say, once the student returns that documentation and you want to process a payment, you will only be able to use the adjustment codes like FTTTHT to make payment. Again, IG is, again, the student is not eligible because of program type or length. So program type is, again, Cal Grant C student, but they're not doing a VOTEC type program. Or program length, the example here would be a Cal Grant A student, but they're in a program that is only 1 year in length. So again, that's program length. So in that situation, it would be correct to report IG. And again, if IG is reported, it will withdraw the student's award. All right. So let's get into what everyone is here for, the actual scenarios. So let's put our thinking caps on. And if you want to participate, use the chat if you want to answer the question. So, our first scenario, a payment was reported in error and needs to be backed out. What code do we use? If we need to back that out, again, remember NS and 0. And this will again back out that payment from the system. Scenario 2. A student's final Cal Grant payment was posted, but we need to make an adjustment because we've done some work and found out that was the incorrect payment amount. What should we do? Now, we didn't talk about this one, so I'm going to go ahead and just say anytime a student's award has been withdrawn, but you need to make an adjustment, please contact our school support team because they'll be able to reinstate the award. And then from there, you can then make the necessary adjustment. Scenario 3. FI was reported by another institution, and now you are trying to make a payment, but it is preventing you from making that payment. What should we do? Another one where you will want to contact, well, first, see if you can contact the other school to see if they can remove the FI code by using NS0 or putting a leave of absence, which then can be overridden by your payment. But if the school is not, cooperating, you can then contact our school support team and they would help you with removing that FI. Scenario 4. A student on your roster graduated before the first disbursement date. What code should be used? NA, not in attendance, SR, graduating senior, or LA, leave of absence. And okay, I got one person here that's saying B. Anyone else want to chime in? All right. Yes, everyone in the chat is correct. We will use the SR code. And that's because the student graduated, and but because they graduated last term, we're going to put a 0 because they're not due any funds, but it will withdraw their award. And also the student will, receive notification, hey, congratulations on graduating, your Cal Grant has been withdrawn. That's not exactly what it says. Don't hold me on that. Number 5. A student was originally reported as NA, but now they're on your campus. How do we get the student back onto our active roster? Correct. The YAY code, YA, and that will bring them back onto your active roster. Oh, why is my, oh, there it goes. So, yay, they're back. They will then be taken from the non-attendance section back to the, I call it active roster, or as you can see, eligible section of your roster. And then you can process the payment for a student, hopefully. And in, depending on what it is, you'll be able to, satisfy the first term, pay him for the second term, or whatever that may be. But we bring them back to the active roster. Number 6, your student is attending a community college and is eligible for a Cal Grant B Student with Dependent Access Award. But the student has 87.5 remaining and lifetime eligibility at the start of the year and is attending full-time in fall and half-time in spring. What should we do? Now, this one I will give you because, again, our limited eligibility students or scenarios do um, require a little bit of TLC. I'll use that one. But in this case, we will pay the fall term using a full-time payment, which will use 50% of that 87.5. That will then leave the student with 37.5 of eligibility for the spring term. And in this case, for spring term, we're going to, again, they are half-time. So we're going to use the HT adjustment code. And then we will enter the correct amount, which in this case, for this student with limited eligibility, will be $1,500. So in that case, go ahead and get into the adjustment amount, override the 1125 and place the correct 1,500 payment. All right. So, quick recap before we go on to the next scenario. As always, it's all about census. That's what drives how we pay the student. So, if we pay before census, use what they are, taking when you're about to pay them, but make sure to come back at your census date and make sure the student has the same unit load. If it's at census, then we just use that information right then and there. And if it's a retroactive payment, after they completed the term, we use the unit count that was at the end of the term. So, number 7, at census, a student was enrolled full-time and a full-time payment was reported in web grants, but after census, the student's enrollment has dropped to 3/4. One, is an adjustment required? And if so, what code are we going to use? I have no and full time. Anyone else want to jump on in, take a guess? Or, well, not a guess, answer? And that actually is correct. No payment adjustment is required because the student, when we paid them, was full time, and when we check they are still full time, they're good as gold. Number 8 here. A student was enrolled full time at the start of the term, and we paid them full time. Now the student drops to 3/4 time when census date gets here. Same thing. Do we need to make an adjustment? And if so, what code do we use to make the adjustment? And Anna, you are correct. Again, yes. Yes, we will need to make an adjustment because, again, there was a change in the unit load to 3/4 time, but we paid full time. So again, we go in, we use our 3/4 time adjustment code and pay them the correct amount for 3/4 time. Number 9, a student was enrolled full time for the fall term, but did not show up on our roster until spring. Can we pay them for the fall term? And if we can, what do we look at census, or do we look at what the unit what count was at the end of the term? And yes, we can pay them. Again, some may call it retroactive, but yes, we can pay them for the fall term, and we can pay them for what their unit or their unit load was at the end of the completed term. All right. So let's talk quickly about verification and some special circumstances. A student receives a payment for Cal Grant Student with Dependents Award. However, as you do your verification, you see that they are ineligible for that Student with Dependent Award. What should be done? In this case, what we want to do is we're going to need to reverse the payment. But before we reverse the payment, I'm sorry, no, we're going to remove, I'm sorry, I twisted in my brain here. We're going to remove the student with dependent so they have the correct, but we're going to go ahead and reverse the payment first. Anything that's going to change an award amount or withdraw them, we want to make sure we back out the payment first. So in this case, we're going to back out with NS 0. Then we're going to go on the MG21 screen. We're going to say no to the SWD status. That will then, over the weekend, have them reprocessed. They will then show the standard access. And if they're, again, eligible, then we will pay them the correct, access award amount. Number 11, a student mistakenly self-certified that they don't, they're not eligible for the student with dependent. But you talk with the student and you find out, hey, you actually do, qualify for that. What should we do? In this case, this is the reverse. We will use again the MG21 screen, and we will say that they are eligible for SWD. Student gets reprocessed. Now they get the up to $6,000 for the access award. And then again, you can report payment afterwards for whatever dollar amount that they are eligible for that SWD award. Number 12, a student was paid the base access award amount, but was later verified as an eligible foster youth access. How do we identify the student as foster youth and make sure that they get that um, increased access? In this case, we will need to, work with the student and have them one on their ICER. We want them to again identify. Also, once that happens, we need to work with the CDSS, or California Department of Social Services, to verify that, again, they are eligible. And then we will then have you submit record change, that G21, to our school support team to have the foster youth flag added to the student's account, which will then in turn give them that increased access award. Number 13, a fall Cal Grant payment was successfully posted in WebGrants prior to education level verification. Why won't WebGrants allow me to post a winter or spring payment? In this case, when education level verification is required, our system will allow a payment for the first term, the fall term, but only that term before it will force you to, you know, do that verification. Because remember earlier, that verification is closely tied to the number of years of eligibility for that student's award. But I want to also point out that hopefully we are doing the education level verification before payment, because there is a scenario where if you don't do it, well, I'll quickly go over it. Basically, student shows as an EL2. They have a Cal Grant B. That means our system is saying, okay, the student is eligible for both tuition and fee and access. So in the fall term, you pay the student tuition and fees and access. Now, come winter, spring, you go to make the payment and, okay, let me do verification. You'll find out the student is actually an EL1. Why is this a problem? As we know, EL1 students are not eligible for the Access Award. So it really makes you do a lot of back work, because now you will need to back out the Access Award that you paid in the fall before you'll be able to do the verification, because again, the student was not truly eligible for that access. So that's why we say it's best practice to verify education level before making their first payment, so there you don't get in that situation. And again, the correct eligibility is set from, from jump. All right. Now, there are some schools that do clock hours, and as you can see, the number of clock hours will actually relate to units, because again, we're all when it comes to payment, it's all about, we look at units. But if you're a school that does clock hours, you have to do a conversion. So as you can see, full time means they got to do 360 plus to again be considered full time. Excuse me. 270 to 359 is 3/4 time, and 180 to 269 is half time. So let's go ahead, and that's again, as you can see, like when we're doing semester based, 4/4, again, you see those numbers here. And the reason I bring this up is this scenario here. We have a student that completed 300 hours during fall and 360 in spring. How do we pay the student? And in this case, because the first one was 300, that would fall into the 3/4 time. And the spring term, 360, they hit exactly 360, which allows us to pay the student full time for the spring term So again, that would add up to 87.5 usage of eligibility for that academic year. Woo! We went through a lot of information. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's take a break. But before we do so, if you still have any questions, please continue to ask those using our Q&A window. And also, again, for those that may have logged in later, if you did not receive a copy of our presentation, please check your spam and junk filters. If you still don't see it, please email us training@csat.ca.gov. And from here, we will then be able to send you out today's PDF. All right. So on my clock, I got 19 after. Oh, it just went to 20 after. So let's say be back at 28 after, and we will then continue to our second session, which will be presented by my coworker, Yvonne. See you in 8 minutes.